Welcome, age of vintage society. Priscilla Presley is a household name, known not only as Elvis Presley's only wife and mother of his only child, but also as an actor, producer, board executive and businesswoman in her own right. Despite divorcing her childhood sweetheart, she is responsible for Graceland's success as a tourist destination and as a memorial to her ex-late husband's many fans. It's fair to say that in the decades since Elvis died, Priscilla is no longer living in the shadow of a powerful and famous man. Why Priscilla Presley and Elvis fell in love with each other. Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. Priscilla Presley, Queen to the King of Rock and Roll. Priscilla Ann Wagner was born in the Brooklyn Naval Hospital to James Wagner, a US Navy pilot, and Anna Iverson on May 24, 1945. Anna was just 19 and her father was a Norwegian immigrant who met and married a Scots-Irish-English woman, giving Priscilla a very mixed heritage and very exotic looks. However, when Priscilla was only 6 months old, her father was killed in a plane crash, returning from leave, and her mother remarried fairly quickly to an Air Force officer named Paul Beaulieu, who originally hailed from Canada. Paul then became her legal father. His profession meant that they travelled around a lot, something that Priscilla came to dislike. Every 2 or 3 years the Air Force would relocate her father and the whole family would have to move. They lived in Maine, Mexico, Connecticut and finally Texas. Making new friends and starting again was a challenge she was heartily sick of. Priscilla was raised with her half-siblings Donald, Michelle and Jeffrey, and twins Thomas and Timothy. The family formally changed her name to Beaulieu in June 1950 after Donald was born. In 1956 they were moved to Germany, news that upset Priscilla greatly after settling for so long and completing junior high. The move to Germany was fraught at the beginning, with the hotel that they stayed in becoming too expensive for them within 3 months of moving over there. They found a large apartment in a vintage building built around the turn of the century at a rent they could afford. It wasn't until after the Beaulieus moved in that they realised that they had moved into a brothel. Housing was so hard to get that they ended up staying. Priscilla was very homesick and didn't speak a word of German. She spent a lot of time on the base with other Americans, listening to the jukebox to whatever American music she could find. Elvis was in Germany in 1959 after signing up the previous year in the US military, and like Priscilla's stepfather, he has been posted to Europe for a time. Although only 14 years old at the time, Priscilla managed to meet Elvis Presley at a party in his rented apartment in the German town of Bad Nauheim. She was introduced to him by Cary Grant, ironically one of her stepfather's friends. Priscilla had such an effect on Elvis that he became tongue-tied and awkward like a schoolboy. He soon overcame his awe of the young teen and for the next 6 weeks courted and wooed her. Priscilla's parents were less than pleased with the relationship, and after Priscilla got back from a night out with Elvis, well past her curfew, they banned her from seeing him. They were concerned with the age gap, with Elvis being 24 and a man of the world. They weren't sure about their daughter's ability to handle the relationship. After 6 weeks, it was all moot anyway, and the young couple was separated by Elvis's transfer back to the States. The separation was heartbreaking for both of them, but they kept in touch by letter and the occasional phone call. In 1962, Elvis invited Priscilla to spend a fortnight at his home, Graceland. He had already asked her parents and was sure she would accept. Her parents, of course, still had reservations, but let their daughter go for this special Christmas vacation. They insisted that she fly first class, write home every day, and had a chaperone at all times. Priscilla flew into Los Angeles as arranged, and immediately Elvis flew her to Las Vegas. He got her to pre-write 14 postcards and had his staff mail them from Los Angeles every day to fool the parents into thinking they were where they said they would be. A year later, when Priscilla was only 17, Elvis convinced her parents to let Priscilla move in with him, promising a top-notch education and all the financial support she could need. Even though they were very apprehensive, they allowed her to move back to the States permanently in 1963 and live. However, they had stipulations. Priscilla was to go to the Immaculate Conception High School, an all-girls Catholic school, to complete her schooling, and she was to live with Elvis's father, Vernon, and his wife, Dee, down the road in a separate house until she graduated. The couple appeared to ignore these rules after a while, and very quickly Priscilla was living in Graceland with Elvis. Part of the agreement was that the couple were planning to marry, and so moving in with Elvis was less of a big deal for the love-stricken teenager than for her concerned parents. Priscilla formally moved into Graceland after graduation, but from Priscilla's biography we learn that she had already spent many a night there and had gradually moved a lot of her belongings into the house. Priscilla said, "The move was so natural, I was there all the time anyway." Priscilla was alone in the house a lot as Elvis was in Hollywood shooting movie after movie. She was bored and wanted to come with him, and for a long time he persuaded her not to. When Elvis was shooting Viva Las Vegas the following year, rumours started appearing in the press that he was sleeping with his leading lady. Priscilla confronted him, and he explained that these rumours were spread by the publicity team to increase the publicity and boost ticket sales for the movie, and that she should ignore them. Priscilla believed him. In the following years, Elvis had affairs with a lot of his leading ladies, but denied them to Priscilla at home. He was forced to allow her to visit him on set in Hollywood, but these trips were very short. In 1966, Elvis's manager, Colonel Parker, reminded Elvis of the morality clause in his contract, and so in 1966, around Christmas, Elvis proposed on one knee in the bedroom to Priscilla with a 3.5-carat diamond ring. Priscilla was 22 and he was 32 at the time. The couple married in Las Vegas on May 1, 1967, in the Aladdin Hotel 8 years after they met. The ceremony was presided over by Nevada Supreme Court Justice David Zenoff and just 14 guests. Guests did include Priscilla's parents and younger sister Michelle. Priscilla said later that it was the people closest to us and private, and that's how we wanted it. We didn't want a fan club, we didn't want a circus. We wanted it to be ours and not have that moment stolen from us. It was a very short ceremony, just 8 minutes, and then they had a champagne breakfast for 100 people, and then held a second reception at Graceland for those who didn't make the Las Vegas shindig. The newlyweds honeymooned in Palm Springs and then retired to their private ranch for a 3-week break. They were joined by family and friends on occasion, but they got to spend time alone without staff around to disturb them. Exactly 9 months after the wedding, a little girl was born to the happy couple. Lisa Marie Presley was born at the Baptist Memorial Hospital in Memphis at 5:01 in the afternoon and instantly became the apple of her father's eye. The baby brought peace and stability to the Presley family, something they both needed after a few tumultuous years. Being married to a superstar isn't easy, and the women who were throwing themselves at Elvis were certainly putting a strain on the marriage. Elvis was back to having affairs with his co-stars, and Priscilla herself had a very brief one with a dance instructor known only as Mark. Priscilla said that it showed her what was missing in her marriage, and despite trying to fix it, she found herself in a full-blown affair with her karate teacher, Mike Stone. By 1972, Priscilla had moved out of Graceland with Lisa Marie, and after putting up with numerous allegations of Elvis's affairs in the press, Priscilla asked for a divorce. She had no desire to share her husband and had tried a number of times to turn her back on his indiscretions. They filed for divorce on Elvis's 38th birthday in 1973. They had only been married for 6 years. They continued to share custody of their daughter. Priscilla was keen to make it on her own, and only got a larger settlement when her lawyers pointed out that Elvis could certainly afford more for his former wife and only child. The divorce was pretty amicable, with Priscilla and Elvis leaving the courthouse together, hand in hand. Straight after Priscilla's divorce in 1973, she opened a clothing boutique with her friend Olivia Biss, a stylist called Biss & Bow. It was a very successful venture. Elvis supported her contacts to promote the launch of the shop. Celebrity clients including Cher, Liza Minnelli and Barbra Streisand shopped there regularly. Priscilla's relationship with Mike Stone came to an end in 1975 and the shop closed in 1976. After Priscilla broke up with Mike Stone, she dated a lot of people including photographer Terry O'Neill, lawyer Robert Kardashian, hairdresser Eli Azurza and financier Kirk Kerkorian. Elvis died suddenly in 1977, leaving his whole estate to his 9-year-old daughter Lisa Marie. Elvis's father Vernon was the executor of the will, but with his death in 1979 it was left to Priscilla to manage the estate and all that it came with for her daughter's future. Faced with having to sell Graceland to secure her daughter's inheritance, Priscilla showed her true business acumen for the first time. She hired CEO Jack Soden to turn Graceland into a tourist attraction. She sunk the remaining money into the renovation, and in 1982 Graceland opened to the public for the first time. In less than a month, Graceland had made back all the money Priscilla had put into it. Lisa Marie became a lost and rebellious teenager, dabbling in drugs, much to her mother's despair. But at 18 she sobered up and joined the Church of Scientology, wrote songs, and in 1988 she married her longtime boyfriend, Danny Keough. Priscilla then became the first chairperson and president of the Elvis Presley Enterprises and remained in this position until Lisa Marie turned 21 and could step into the position and claim her inheritance. Under Priscilla, the trust had grown to be worth more than $100 million. She started what became a long-term on-and-off relationship with male model Michael Edwards. When he began to show romantic inclinations towards 16-year-old Lisa Marie, Priscilla broke off the relationship. While married to Elvis, Priscilla was not encouraged to pursue her interests in singing, dancing, acting, or even modelling, so in the 1980s she took up a few offers and debuted on TV as a co-host on Those Amazing Animals in 1982. A year later she acted professionally in Love is Forever with Michael Langdon, with whom she did not get along with very well. In 1984, Priscilla landed the role of Jenna Wade on the long-running television series Dallas. She was the third Jenna, but the longest-serving actor in the role. From this role she moved onto the big screen and starred opposite Leslie Nielsen in the Naked Gun movie franchise. These were all box office successes, and in between films she appeared in The Adventures of Ford Fairlane and Tales from the Crypt. It was at this time Priscilla met Marco Garibaldi, a Brazilian screenwriter who turned to computer programming later in life. They were introduced by a friend in 1984 who gave a script Marco had written, hoping Priscilla would produce it. She didn't, but in 1987 she gave him a son named Navarone Garibaldi. Priscilla was in the cast of Dallas at the time, and her pregnancy was written into the storyline. Now a force to be reckoned with, Priscilla turned her hand to business and created her own perfume line in 1988, as well as selling a line of products on the Home Shopping Network. In 1989, Priscilla became a grandmother for the first time with the birth of a baby girl, Riley, her daughter Lisa Marie's first child. Priscilla didn't see as much of her grandchild as she would have liked, as Riley was predominantly brought up by her father in Hawaii and Los Angeles. Her second grandchild, Benjamin, was born in 1988 to the same parents. After the Naked Gun series of films, Priscilla went back to the small screen with roles in Melrose Place, Touched by an Angel, Spin City, and a TV film called Breakfast with Einstein in the late 1990s. It was just after these movies that Priscilla was elected to the board of directors at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. They were keen to have her on board after her spectacular success with Elvis Presley Enterprises, along with her acting and producing credentials and incredible business acumen. In 1994, Lisa Marie divorced her first husband and married Michael Jackson, making Priscilla the wife of the King of Rock and Roll and the mother-in-law of the King of Pop. It was a short-lived marriage for Lisa Marie, with divorce only 2 years later. Lisa Marie married Nicolas Cage in 2002, but tragically the marriage only lasted 107 days. Since 2003, Priscilla has been the ambassador for the Santa Barbara-based Dream Foundation, which provides wishes for terminally ill children and adults. Priscilla still had various businesses going on in the background, and in 2006 she flew to Sydney, Australia to debut the linen collection that she had partnered with Bruno Shavy to create. When a relationship with Gary Baldy broke up in 2006, Priscilla started dating British TV executive Nigel Lithgow, and a bit later she was linked with restaurateur Richie Palmer, as well as Australian entertainer Barry Crocker and disc jockey Toby Anstis. Lisa Marie's fourth marriage to Michael Lockwood in 2006 brought 2 more grandchildren for Priscilla in 2008, with the birth of twin girls Harper and Finley. It was Lisa Marie's longest relationship, but in 2016 they broke up and divorced. Animal activism is also something that Priscilla has been passionate about since she was a child, but in the early 2000s she became an advocate to stop the abuse of racehorses, and also, along with Kim Basinger, she is also against the dog meat trade in South Korea. As a child, she was always bringing home lost dogs and hurt bunnies, and during Trump's presidency she called on him to implement new animal cruelty legislation. Acting on her love of dance, Priscilla appeared on the American reality show Dancing with the Stars. She partnered with Louis Van Amstel. Whilst they enjoyed themselves and Priscilla was very committed, they were the first couple eliminated from the competition and finished in last place. Priscilla was always keen to try something new, and in 2012 she performed in the role of the Wicked Queen in the London pantomime version of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, a role she relished. She was approaching 60 and keen to embrace opportunities that came her way. Priscilla has a most unusual godchild. In 2012 she was asked to be the godmother of American Dream, the largest steamboat ever built, and christened in April 2012 in her home port of Memphis. In 2017 she was linked with Welsh singer Tom Jones. Both parties denied being more than good friends and claimed to have known each other since the 60s. Today, Priscilla is in awe of the Elvis biopic produced and directed by flamboyant Australian director Baz Luhrmann, celebrating 65 years since Elvis bought Graceland and 40 since Priscilla opened the other big white house to the public. Priscilla may be approaching her 80s, but if her first 80 years are anything to go by, we would say she still has a lot more to achieve. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Unfortunately or not, Priscilla was not the only woman in Elvis's life. Did Natalie Wood love Elvis Presley? Let's find out from this video.